According to one national writer, apparently USC fans need to be concerned about their 2023 recruiting class. On our last episode, we talked about how Malachi Nelson, USC's five-star quarterback in their 2023 class, took a trip out to Texas A&M over the weekend. Does that mean he's on the flip watch list? Plus, we got some more recruiting news. As always, we try to bring it to you. And I'm going to give a couple of different grades to two different position groups. And when I show you the report card, you might raise an eyebrow. That's what's coming up next here on Locked On USC. Let's do this.
You are Locked On Trojans, your daily podcast on the USC Trojans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Right on, everyone. I'm your host, Marc Culkin, and thanks for making Locked On USC your first listen every day, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on your podcast, wherever you download it. We're free. And if you are watching on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Give me your feedback. Without you, the show doesn't mean anything. And thanks for coming along for the ride. All right, at the top there, we talked about USC's 2023 recruiting class and how it might be in danger. A little hyperbole there. We're going to use that word one more time coming up shortly. There's on the On3 network, there's a national writer, Keegan Pope, and he put out a story with a list of the top 5 elite guys who could potentially flip from their current commitments. Malachi Nelson made his cut. Let me read this excerpt here, just regarding Malachi. 5-star plus quarterback Malachi Nelson was Lincoln Riley's first commitment when he left Oklahoma for USC last fall. The decision to follow the coach he committed to in Norman back to his home state was a no-brainer. The Trojans built an early case for the number 1 class in the country, but have seen their momentum on the recruiting trail dissipate in recent months. We're going to come back to that here in a moment. In what can only be considered a major surprise, Nelson visited Texas A&M over the weekend, his first trip to any school other than USC since his commitment. That news sent a shockwave from College Station all the way back to LA. Right now, according to WeRSC's Scott Schrader, the concern about Nelson's commitment status isn't major, but if more visits, whether to Texas A&M or other schools, begin to materialize, then the questions will only get louder. Whether or not, yada, yada, yada. So, look, I talked about this on our last episode. Number one, first point, if USC's recruiting momentum has dissipated in recent months, then all I have to say is USC, keep doing the great yeoman's work you're doing, and we'll come back to that point in our segment on when we talk about recruiting. The second point, I said hyperbole. Here's the second time. I think that might be the best way to describe the story regarding Nelson's visit to A&M. I spoke about this on our last episode. First of all, Lincoln Riley knew ahead of time that he was going. So this wasn't any major surprise that the writer is trying to make this out to be. So, Lincoln, he got the message way ahead of time before everybody else. However, is there smoke? I don't know. I guess if you do want to look at it from the devil's advocate point of view, I guess, now that, he has taken that trip, other programs are going to be able to kind of, hey, if he's willing to take a trip there, maybe he's willing to take a trip out here. So, maybe there's a little bit of smoke out there starting to build up, but, unless he's willing to take, more of these spontaneous trips, I don't think USC fans have anything to be concerned about. Now, if he does, then I'll feel safe in saying that USC is now in a bidding war, so to speak. I don't know how that's going to play out. I've talked about this not only here but also over on wearesc.com and in my writings. USC has a different view of the NIL game, and they do not want to use, either via a collective or through their Boulevard or Stay Doubted programs. They don't want to use NIL as a financial inducement to get kids to, or recruits to come to USC. That's just not how they see the NIL, how it was intended. And I agree with them. Nevertheless, that's how the game's being played right now. So until more guardrails are put in place, and if USC doesn't want to lose a Malachi Nelson, I'm not saying they are, but again, if the rumors are true of these dollar packages that are being thrown around to some high school recruits, you never know. Just never say never, I guess, is the best way to go about this. And we'll keep everyone updated as this kind of plays itself out. But with the season coming up, not only USC's football season, the high school football seasons are starting sooner. So I'm pretty sure that Nelson's going to be starting to really focus in on his team, the Los Alamitos Griffins, because they're going to have a pretty good team, at least on the offensive side of the ball. And they got their eyes on the prize. They want to win a championship this year. They're going all in. So we'll see what happens there. You can bet on it that I will be bringing this topic up more often than not when it comes to USC's top recruit in the class. If it's not Malachi Nelson, it's definitely Zachariah Branch, the wide receiver, the 5-star from Bishop Gorman. Where one goes, the other goes. So that's something we will keep your track on. Speaking of betting, head on over to betonline.net because they are the fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your betting needs. You can find all of your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, even golf. Speaking of baseball, everyone knows by now I'm a Dodger fan, LA Dodgers, but the Padres are going to try and get back into the game here. They won the Juan Soto sweepstakes, so check that out on BetOnline. They continue to give the top online resource for all of your sports wagering information. From live in-game betting scores and podcasts, they have you covered. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening today. BetOnline, where the game starts. So, back to hyperbole. Well, no, we're going to move forward. We're going to lay off of Keegan. However, only momentarily. USC just received another commitment this afternoon, Tuesday. We're recording this Tuesday evening. So when you're listening and watching this Wednesday morning, you're going to find out that USC got another commitment. This one is from Maliki Crawford, the 4-star cornerback from Pacifica High School in Oxnard, California. He's now joined the 2023 class. If that name sounds familiar, again, it should. We talked about him just yesterday. He's that rangy 6'3", long arms. I just from the few highlights that I've seen, I haven't actually seen him play in a game live, but from what I watched via highlight, maybe another Terrell Thomas. I don't know. We'll see. He's got his senior season coming up here, so we'll get a chance to evaluate him. But it brings me back to Keegan, the writer's comment about how the Trojans recruiting momentum has dissipated. Well, if the new definition of dissipate, it means only getting one commitment per week, 4 weeks in a row. I'll have to get used to that new definition. Just let's recap this for Mr. Keegan Pope. I'm sure he was just going for effect here, so I'm not really coming after you. But just as a reminder for everybody, Back on July 18th, USC got a commitment from Taka Curtis, the 4-star linebacker from Many, Louisiana. He chose USC over Ohio State and Wisconsin, and he's from Louisiana, which means he had eliminated LSU earlier in the process. USC, a week later, got a commitment from Micah Banuelos, the 4-star offensive lineman from the state of Washington. He chose USC over Oregon and Texas A&M. And then today, Tuesday, 4-star Maliki Crawford. He chose USC over the Bruins, as well as a few other Pac-12 programs were on his resume. And yeah, that is only 3. However, this Saturday, USC feels really confident. They've got a good vibe going with the defensive end, rush end out of Texas, Braylon Shelby. So that could be the 4th one. And even if he's not the 4th one, but he will be, getting 3 does not qualify for in any way, shape, or form for the definition of dissipate. All right, so I guess what I'm trying to say is USC is doing really well as they head out of summer into fall camps. They're getting commitments left and right, and they're filling needs. They're not going to have a large defensive backfield recruiting class. They're looking to take maybe 4 or 5, but they're getting going here. Maliki Crawford, it's a good 4-star to grab. And there's more coming. We talked about that on a previous episode. As far as some more recruiting news, head on over to wearesc.com when you're done here, making Locked On USC your first listen and your first watch. Scott Schrader has a recruiting article going. He's got a couple of them, actually, on a couple of the 2024 guys. The first one is on the cornerback prospect Dakota Fields. He's another long, rangy guy. He'll be playing in the same defensive backfield as Roderick Pleasant at Gardena Serra. I'm going to read. I can't go over everything that Scott talks about in his story because it is a premium article. So, again, head on over there. If you want recruiting information and you want the behind the scenes, the nuggets, that premium information, I can give it to you, a few days later. I'm not going to give it to you when it first comes out because that would be taking food out of our mouths. We're a subscriber site over there, but we're free on Locked On USC. Nevertheless, one of the questions Scott asked Dakota Fields, and this goes back to an interesting quote, and it supports my point on our last episode where we were talking about George Kliavkoff's bitterness and how USC is already regretting their choice moving to the Big Ten. So one of the questions Scott asked Dakota Fields in his story is, do you still want to play football in the snow? And does USC moving to the Big Ten help with that? Fields answered, yes, and it does help a lot. USC is moving to the Big Ten is a really big deal. There's a lot more money involved, and they'll be playing against a lot better competition. Sounds familiar. Teams like Ohio State, Michigan, Michigan State, Penn State, and in front of a lot of great fan bases, end quote. I raised these exact same points talking about this yesterday in our episode on our episode of Locked On. So to hear the recruits actually kind of spew out the same verbal diarrhea that I've been giving you, now it becomes factual. You're now hearing it from the recruits. And it just really, I guess, points out that Commissioner Kliavkoff wasn't being very collegial with those comments. Where else do we want to go with this one? I mentioned Roderick Pleasant. Scott has an article on Roderick Pleasant's timeline. You can find that over there on wearesc.com. So, but the question really is Pleasant on a timeline to announce for USC, or is he going to wait until the early signing period day in December? You're going to have to go head over to the wearesc.com site to find out the answers to that in the story. But what I can say is that he plans to use all of his recruiting trips. But before anybody gets too nervous, he's got a really good relationship with the USC track program and their head coach, Quincy Watts. Again, we have to emphasize Roderick is an elite sprinter, Olympic caliber, world-class speed. So, his relationship with Quincy Watts is really tight. And it's right up there with Lincoln Riley, which is a good sign for USC fans. But don't look for a commitment from Roderick anytime soon. With that said, things change really quickly with these guys. But as of now, he's intending to make his commitment early signing day. Sarah has a really cool program that they do at the school, and that's when he's planning to do it. So I also said at the top of the show that I was going to be giving some letter grades to a couple of the different position groups. All right, so here we go. Now, I know I'm going to get an eyebrow or two or three raised when I give the quarterback grade, and especially when I give it compared to the offensive line. Those are going to be the two position groups that we talk about today. Now, on every week, I do a podcast on Inside the Trojan Huddle with Greg Katz as the host, myself, Chris Arledge and his musings, and there's always a fourth panelist to go in there. This week it was Eric McKinney. And let's just say that Chris Arledge and myself had a difference of opinion on these two position group letter grades. So make sure you go check out this week's episode. It was pretty good, in my opinion. We had some fun. All right, so let's just get right to it. I gave the USC quarterback room, not the starter, the room, a B+ grade. And people are saying, what? How can you give them a B+? You've got Caleb Williams, uber talent, one of the top quarterback recruits in his class, if not the top recruit, and he committed to Lincoln Riley. USC has Miller Moss, who was challenging for that starting position. Again, another high-end 4-star quarterback that pretty much had his pick of he could have gone any program he wanted. He chose USC. And he chose USC when USC didn't have Caleb Williams, but they had Jackson Dart. They had Keaton Slovis. That wasn't a quarterback room void of talent then. So here's my rationale for the B+ grade. And I'm going to use a little bit of Lincoln Riley, what he said at Pac-12 Media Day. Caleb Williams he's played less than half a season as a starter, maybe a little bit more than half a season. And as the season went on during his freshman year, things became a little bit more challenging for him because his tendencies, defensive coordinators will scout you. They will figure out your tendencies. And they will make things more difficult for you, more challenging. And one of the easiest ways to confuse a quarterback, a young quarterback who's still learning to play at the college level, is flooding the field with 8 defenders when you're trying to throw the ball. All of a sudden, those windows and open receivers aren't so open anymore. And there was some signs of struggles with that with Caleb as the season went on last year. Miller Moss has even less playing experience than Caleb. So I don't think I'm that far off base. Now, Chris Arledge gave the quarterback group an A. Okay, I'm fine with that. I can be, if somebody wants to appeal this grade, I could be convinced. But you know what? I'm going to set a standard here. Go earn that grade. There's nothing wrong with a B+. win 3-4 games and show that, hey, you know what? Whatever Marc is saying, he's full of caca. I'll change the grade. No big deal. It's not that deep. But again, it's all based off of experience. And until I can see USC's quarterbacks, and here's another thing, once you get, heaven forbid, Caleb got hurt and went down for a game, and then Miller Moss, what's behind them? That's your scholarship quarterbacks right there. That's thin. So I guess on the whole big picture type of thing, that's where I'm coming in on a B+ for the room. Okay. Now the O-line again, and this is where Chris and I we had a friendly disagreement. I gave them an A-, and I did it because of the strength of the interior of the offensive line. The question marks at the tackle spots, and typically that's not where you want to have the question marks. And Eric McKinney raised this point. If you want your offensive line to have experience, you'd prefer to have it at the tackle spots. I agree to an extent. We know in the NFL that the guys who make the big money are the blindside protectors, left tackle, right tackle. They make the big money. But considering the offensive scheme that USC employs, knowing the type of athlete that Caleb Williams and to a lesser extent Miller Moss, he has great pocket awareness. Where would you prefer pressure coming? If you're Caleb Williams and you've got those wheels, that extra gear, I would prefer knowing that if I have to escape, I have to escape because the pressure is coming from the edge. I've already got maybe a foot or two head start. I prefer that much more than it coming right up in my face, up the gut through the interior. USC has tremendous experience up the middle. At left guard, you've got Andrew Voorhees. At center, you've got Brett Nylon. And at right guard, you've got Justin Dietich. All are fifth-year guys with a lot of experience, playing time under their belt. And here's another thing. I didn't even bring this up yesterday, and I should have. Andrew Voorhees has shown that he could play left tackle as well. When Cortland Ford went down last year, when the injuries were just too much to play with, Andrew slid outside, and it was just a seamless transition. Didn't skip a beat. USC's offensive line last year, I thought, was the most productive unit as a whole on that 4-8 squad. And that was with 1 year with Clay McGuire getting to mold those guys. Now Josh Henson comes over, and he's going to take what Clay McGuire left, which is a bunch of experienced dudes. You've got Cortland Ford and Jonah Monheim and Bobby Haskins battling for the tackle spots. And I mentioned the three guys on the interior. That's why I'm going A-, slightly above the B+ of the quarterback. And this is the point I wanted to drive home. The quarterback's best friend is an offensive line. And if Caleb is confident with his O-line protecting him, specifically up the middle, where he'll have a chance to escape if they send if let's say that the opponent sends a full house blitz. Man, it's a lot easier to escape from an edge guy than you got two or three guys breaking through the middle. That's just how I see things. Doesn't mean I'm right. That's just my opinion on the matter. So that's how I graded the offensive line versus the quarterback, and how I justified the grades. So we'll go over more grades, but also make sure you check out the Inside the Trojan Huddle episode. I think you guys will really enjoy it. We had a lot of fun with it. All right, so there you go. We'll be back again with another episode tomorrow. Again, we're 5 days a week now as we head into the season, which, by the way, 32 days away from kickoff against Rice. Fall camp starts on Friday. I'll be there. I'll also be there Thursday at USC. They're having a meet and greet with the media, the coaching staff, from 1 till 4. We got our list of players and the times they'll be there. And we'll go over that again. We'll go over that list tomorrow as well. So until then, everyone, fight on. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.